Good evening, good afternoon, rather, ladies and gentlemen. I am Mike Carlson.
I am Brian Heisenberg.
And this is The View from the U. Brian, we're doing a special episode this weekend. You've seen it all over ESPN. Who's in, who's out. We're going to modify it a little bit. We got who's in and who's on the bubble because really, if we don't mention you on who's in, you're out.
Yeah, it's not really worth us wasting the breath on teams like, say, the University of Colorado or the University of Kansas because your hopes haven't really started in the last few years. But Mike, let's move into who's in. Give me the Pac-12.
I'm going to go Pac-12. I got to talk about ASU. Obviously, the team you're going to look at first is Oregon. Marcus Mariota, that's the team. Everyone thinks they're in, but I think ASU is a contender just because they're a tough team to play. Tough to play at home. Of course, you got the Forkham Devils thing going on there. You know, the quarterback play has been, back and forth. They've been splitting time. One guy's obviously injured. The other guy's he's filled in the role really well, if you ask me, Brian. We had one of our friends, Scott Ayers, there. He said ASU, this is a good ASU team and a team that just beat Stanford.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you saw them in the Pac-12 championship last year, and they have a very good shot of going in there again. But let's talk about Oregon. They're in a division where at one point Cal was the leading team. The Pac-12 North has sort of been up and down this whole season, and they've really sort of stepped out because Cal's had a few losses and Stanford's kind of fallen from grace, so the road is paved nicely for the Ducks.
And I think if you're Oregon, I don't think you can afford to have as many close games as you would, an SEC team. I think you got to blow teams out. You have to show that playoff committee that you are here to win and that one loss was a fluke, just something that happens when you play football. So I think if you're Oregon and if you're any of Oregon's opponents, get used to them running up the score on you.
Yeah, definitely. So let's go to the Big 12. We got Baylor, TCU, and Kansas State are our three teams in. Mike, give us a rundown.
I got to talk about TCU first, Brian. This is a Texas Christian University football team that is very good. You got to fear the frog right now. I feel like they've been playing a lot of great football of late. Of course, you got a lot of athletes on that team. You got Trayvon Boykin at your quarterback position. He's going to do you a lot of good. I think this is a TCU team, Brian, that they're nowhere near the Andy Dalton team that won the Rose Bowl a couple years ago. But I think this is a serviceable squad and one that'll make that committee's decision just a little bit tougher.
Yeah, definitely. And I want to talk about K-State for a second because I have to admit, after they lost to Auburn, I sort of wrote them off. I said, all right, this is a good team, but there's no way they're going to make the four teams in the playoff. But looking back at it, with that massive win over Oklahoma, due in part to some absolutely atrocious field goal kicking, thank you Sooners for that one. I still think they're contenders. I think they still have a shot if they win some more big games. Come up with those big wins. They have a shot of winning this Big 12.
I think they do, and we're going to move to the next one, Baylor, of that three-headed monster. Brian Baylor, Oregon South. They got the best unis in the league. They got and whole of college football. What am I kidding? There's no league. They got the best unis. They got the best coach in Art Browse. I feel like they run a great offense. Bryce Petty's a superstar. I like this Baylor team. That loss to TCU is not going to look good. But I think if you're Baylor, you got to win out the rest of the year.
Yeah, especially in a game like West Virginia, where there's such a competitive division opponent, you really have to come up big in that game. But we'll give them a break. They just came up with a absolutely massive division win, and they're still contenders. This doesn't mark down their record.
Exactly. So Brian, we're going to move up north. Your conference, Big Ten. Talk to us about Ohio State.
All right, Ohio State. While they may not have Braxton Miller, they're still a very quality football program. That's Wisconsin.
I was doing the O for Ohio State.
Okay.
Ohio State. Okay, continue.
Either way, they're still a very good football team. They got a fantastic defense, and this is an offense that plain and simple scores points. They don't need Braxton Miller to do that. They got a really well-rounded offense.
And I think JT Barrett stepped up. To your point, Brian, we did not like JT Barrett earlier on the show. We were mad that Braxton Miller wasn't playing. I think JT Barrett, though, he's looking good in the future. If you're a Buckeye fan, it's very, very bright.
Yeah, definitely. So we're going to move on. Ohio State's big competitor in the Big Ten East is Michigan State. And Mike, you got to admit, this is a very good Michigan State team. Even though I am a Michigan fan, even though I am wearing Auburn, put that all aside, this is a fantastic team. Of course, they're the Rose Bowl winning team from last year, and they still got it.
I think they do, and they have a great defense. They're coached very well. They're not going to be as consistent as your Alabamas, your other SEC powerhouse schools, your Florida States. But I think that they're going to make it tough. This is a good team. They're very under the radar, but you're not nearly as flashy as any other school out there that we've talked about. Michigan State, proven that defense is it's going to put you in championship contention.
Exactly. So for the Big Ten West, we're going with the Gophers and the Huskers. And like the Big Ten West hasn't been a particularly strong division while it has been competitive with some big names like Michigan. But Looking at it from a different point of view, these guys are just winning the games that they should win, and that's why they're ahead in the race. Minnesota beat Michigan, and they went and beat Northwestern. These guys don't get caught up in the hype. They're charging forward, and especially with a guy like Amir Abdullah for Nebraska. They're looking good to win the division.
And these are two teams, Brian, that they're very, you look at them on the surface, and they play in a division that's not super competitive this year. I think that, though, like you said, they've won the games that have mattered. They've played the games. They've played it well. And you can't really count that loss against Michigan State, against Nebraska, because they played a very good Michigan State team. I think if you're Minnesota and you're Nebraska, you got to play out, you got to win out the rest of the year just to be in any kind of contention.
Yeah, definitely. It's definitely going to be competitive going into the final stretch. But, Mike, let's move on to the SEC Conference. Those boys down south are really sort of stuck into two states for the SEC West.
Alabama and Mississippi.
That's all you need to know. Fantastic teams.
That's it.
They're winning games. Alabama's going to get the chance to play Mississippi State. Auburn's going to get the chance to play Ole Miss. So we'll see if there is truly a changing of the guard to Mississippi being the superior football state. But, Mike, let's talk about the SEC East. I mean, we're talking about a division where up to last week Kentucky was in contention for the #1 seed. Now, thanks to Louisiana State, that is no longer a possibility. But I mean, Georgia seems to have an absolute coast to Atlanta.
Oh yeah, Brian, they can throw it on cruise control right now. This is a very good Georgia team. Obviously, the loss of their star running back Todd Gurley really not being an issue. They got Mr. Chubbs there running the ball at the University of Georgia. I really like what he's doing. Obviously, not the caliber of Todd Gurley, but he's a serviceable back. I think Georgia, they're going to win the SEC East, and I think it's just a matter of, if you're Georgia, if you're on the coaching staff, if you're one of the players, which team in the SEC West do you not want to play? You don't want to play. I don't think you want to go head-to-head against Ole Miss. I don't think you want to go head-to-head against Mississippi State or even Alabama, because Nick Saban is a good coach. I think if you're Georgia, the team you have the best shot of beating, I think it might be Auburn, Brian. I hate to say it because I know you're an Auburn fan, but I think that the team that has showed the most weakness this year, at least, has been Auburn.
Never doubt a fourth and 18 Hail Mary. Mike, if you want to look at it, I feel like the shutout win at Mizzou was really the nail in the coffin for all these other teams. But, Mike, we're running out of time. Let's move on to our last conference for the Who's In segment. Let's talk about the ACC, the Atlantic Coast Conference, the home of Jameis Winston, who is no longer Mike's favorite.
No, not my favorite. We'll touch more on that later, but Brian, Florida State, they're a lock. They play in an easy ACC conference. We can skip right over them. Jameis Winston, barring an absolute disaster at the quarterback position, Florida State, they're in.
Especially with Sean McGar showing that he's capable with that win over Clemson. Clemson was really the only other capable team in the conference. Florida State beat him, so it's a lock. But, Mike, let's talk about the ACC Coastal. I am loving playing this conference. Of course, it's the home to my Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets. But we're looking at teams that are either 2-1, 2-2, 1-1, or 1-2 in conference play. So, Mike, this division is absolutely blown wide open right now.
Exactly, and I feel like if we suited up, Brian, we could maybe have a shot at winning the Coastal Division. That's just how it is right now. Everyone, as long as you're not Virginia Tech University, anyone's got a shot to win the Coastal Conference.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Northwestern was victim to the Ohio State hangover last year. This year, I think it might be Virginia Tech taking that fall. But that's the ACC in a nutshell. Let's move on to our on-the-bubble teams, because there's so many teams that are just on the verge of being in contention. Mike, give us our first team.
I'm going to talk about the first two teams, actually, Brian. UCLA and Notre Dame, two very similar teams. Obviously, Notre Dame, heartbreaking loss against Florida State. Tough play call. Notre Dame's got all the tools to win. Golson, Corey Robinson, a defense that's good enough. They're coached by Brian Kelly, who's an absolute defensive coaching scheme genius. I think Notre Dame, they need a couple things to happen. They need maybe those SEC teams to beat up on each other a little bit, but I think they're on the bubble to get in. And UCLA, a very comparative team, haven't played great football of late, barely beat Cal. I think that, both of these teams, Brian, very comparable. They need some good things to happen, though.
Yeah, Mike, I want to talk about UCLA for a second because my personal belief, the only reason they're still in contention is because they have that Arizona State win in their back pocket. That's a huge win against a team that's really emerged, as we've said, as a huge conference rival. But, Mike, Notre Dame, I really think that while they may no longer be undefeated, the time and opponent may actually come as a service to them, because we all know, for example, when Auburn made it into the national championship, they lost early to LSU, whereas Ohio State lost late to Michigan State, as late as you can possibly lose. So what happens is if they're right on the edge of the 14 playoff, but Mississippi and Mississippi State are both in the playoff. One of them's going to knock the other out, and Notre Dame can just waltz in.
I think you're definitely right. It's the timing of that loss that's going to help the most. But Brian, we got to keep moving on. We're almost running out of time. We got to talk Bama and West Virginia. I think Bama, the quarterback play, Brian, it's going to struggle. You can't win, and you cannot win in college football without a good quarterback. You can only lean on Nick Saban and those recruits so much. I think Bama's on the bubble, but I think when all's said and done, they won't be in.
I think what we'll see over the next few weeks on Bama will really determine their fate. Because, of course, last week, coming our way with a very narrow win against Arkansas, my thought was, all right, throw them out the window. These guys no longer have a chance. Then came the Texas A&M game, and I was eating my shoe at that point. So this Bama team, they're really kind of unpredictable. And then West Virginia's sort of the same. Obviously couldn't contend with the big teams right at the beginning of the season, and yet coming away with a big win against Bama.
And our last one, Brian, USC. A lot of things have to go right for this one. I think UCLA, Notre Dame, Bama, and I think those three teams have, they don't need a ton to go right. USC needs a lot to go right. They need Oregon to cannibalize themselves against UCLA. They need all those Pac-12 teams to fight within each other, the SEC teams to fight within each other, the ACC teams to fight within each other. They need the Big 12. They need everything to go right to possibly get in.
Yeah, definitely. And I think Arizona State beating Stanford was a big one because that was a game that in order for UCLA to get back into it, they really needed Stanford to win so they could gain a little bit of leverage, but I really don't think it's possible for the Trojans now, but we'll see in the next few weeks. So, Mike, do you want to end with a shout-out?
I'm going to end with a shout-out, Brian. I'm going to surprise you. I want to shout out to my co-host, Brian Heisenbuttle. He could be a War Eagle. He got accepted into Auburn this week. Brian, my sincerest congratulations. You've been an Auburn fan since the very beginning. I got to give you all the credit in the world, man. Hey, you're going to college.
Yeah, giving it right back to you. Mr. DJ Carlson here. Mike DJ Carlson accepted to Mizzou. Is there a Tiger in his future? We will see. But what we will see is you next week for next week's show. Thank you for watching. I'm Brian Heisenbottom.
And I'm Mike Carlson.
See you next week.
Call me Katy Perry.